Hi, James Mulvaney, CDNify founder here, and I'm joined today by Steve Benn. Hi, Steve.
Hi, James. Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. So what I want to do just initially, our podcast today is going to be on the topic of productivity. I just wanted to give Steve a little bit of an introduction and tell you about his background. So, Steve, you work with digital entrepreneurs, don't you?
Yeah, particularly startup founders, co-founders, people selling digital products and services.
Yeah, and your kind of background is in marketing, right? As a sort of an advisor.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of corporates, also sort of bricks and mortar companies, shall we call them.
Yeah.
And now I've gained sort of more and more clients in the digital arena. So, services, training products, things like that, really.
And you're becoming increasingly interested in the area of product, sort of personal development in terms of working directly with entrepreneurs on marketing strategies, because you work with us here at CDNify with our launch strategy and with our ongoing marketing strategy, but also you work with entrepreneurs looking at how stuff like that links in with their kind of psyche or their mindset.
Well, there's this term that's kind of going around at the moment. It's really hot. It's called, you're a growth hacker or growth hacking, which kind of combines traditional marketing with having some technical skills as well. So you guys at CDNify, I'd really classify as growth hackers.
Yeah.
What I'm kind of seeing that also fits in with that is getting your mindset and productivity right for things that are actually going to help you move forward with your business, really grow it fast, because there are a lot of things, particularly with productivity, that can actually help you with your sales funnels, with your actual mindset and how much you get done. And that really determines how quickly you grow.
Yeah, so looking at really helping business owners or entrepreneurs achieve what they want.
Yeah, exactly. That's completely it.
Right, so as I mentioned, we're going to talk today about productivity. You've got some things to go over. I think my first question for you then is why is productivity important? Or in fact, actually, could you name 2 reasons why productivity is important for business owners, entrepreneurs, founders, co-founders, CTOs, etc.?
Yeah, okay, no problem there. So first things first, with a business, okay, there's always that human component to a business, and then there's the sort of the operation side of things. Now within that, I think basically a business has just got 2 functions. You add value to something, and then you tell people about it. And that's really all a business is. And if you can improve your productivity in terms of how you connect with people and how you add that value, well, your business can get more done. And that means actually improving sort of the procedures that you have, the way things work. And then if you can actually learn to manage your mindset, you can get a little more productive yourself. That kind of almost multiplies the sort of the increases you've seen in your business. So you see much, much bigger growth. So actually tackling the productivity of the marketing side of the business and tackling how much you can actually put into the business, that's the quickest way to grow really, really fast.
In our last podcast, we talked to our marketing manager who works internally here at CDNify about Bootstrap marketing techniques, and the whole area of Bootstrap is huge in the tech startup world. Bootstrapping obviously is starting a business or testing an idea, validating an idea, and with very minimal or if any budget. And I guess productivity therefore is very important when it comes to this, because you need to get things done as quickly as possible, and you need to make sure you're doing the right things at the right time.
Yeah, totally. What you'll find is, particularly with marketing, sometimes you'll start off a campaign or you'll introduce a new service or sub-product to your business.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it just doesn't work. We've all had this. I've run a number of sort of marketing, training products, and also digital services and physical products as well. And some of them, for whatever reason, they just don't take with the market. And it'll be the same for almost every business. You come up with something that you want to launch, and maybe you launched in the wrong way, or the market just isn't interested, even though you think yourself it's going to work. And you really need to know when's the time to pull back.
Yeah.
Get it started quickly. If it works, then you put everything into it. And that really, features a lot of things and feeds into bootstrapping. But sometimes you'll get things that won't work, and you need to know when to pull back and say, right, we really started this off. We've got it done as quickly as possible, but this isn't going to get us where we want to go. We need to now do a pivot and move to something else.
So just sum up then, why is productivity important? And if you just sum it up in a single sentence for founders and co-founders.
Okay, if you work for somebody else, no matter how well you do during that week or month, apart from bonuses, you're going to get paid the same amount, aren't you?
Yep.
When you're a co-founder, a founder, what you actually make is directly related to how productive you are. It's as simple as that. So it's really about determining your own income and your own freedom.
But I guess if you're a co-founder or a founder, or you're in charge of managing a team, it is important for you to understand as well the metrics of how productivity relates to certain outcomes, in terms of, if your team aren't productive, then you're not going to achieve as much as you want because they're not going to achieve the rate or the level that's kind of required in order to, so you can achieve your objectives. So that's an important thing to factor in. So moving on, let's just talk about the major blocks that people encounter and actually kind of drill down into the nitty-gritty of, how can we become more productive? Because that's the kind of million-dollar question, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I think there are two basic issues there. One is not knowing where you're going, really. You've not got a defined plan. The less of a defined plan you have, the more time you waste on things that just aren't important. And the second thing, which kind of feeds off that, is getting distracted or procrastinating because you don't want to see the thing fail, or you've got too many other things on your mind, and so you can't actually go ahead with this. And I sometimes see some entrepreneurs that have too many projects on at once, and they can't focus on any of them. And there are other people who've got this great idea, but they just don't push it forward. They just kind of idle. They don't really kind of move it forward, and they can miss an opportunity to take advantage of like a huge sort of change in the marketplace or potential disruptive event.
I think I've heard of this term, entrepreneur, which is where someone has an idea and instead of actually executing what's important, they sort of do everything else around it. The classic scenario is someone will come up with an idea for a business, so the first thing they'll do is register a domain name, and then they'll have a logo designed, and then they'll have the business cards printed, and they'll have a letterhead printed, and they'll spend maybe 2-3 weeks doing all this stuff, and maybe have a website designed for it, but they haven't actually got the business in terms of there's no product there yet, or there's no service there, and more vitally, there's no customers. They don't actually know if anyone wants whatever it is idea that they've kind of had. So sometimes it's important to do things and remember, especially in terms of being productive. And I used to be really guilty of this. A few years ago when I was still at university, I used to come up with ideas practically every month, and a lot of them I would start trying to implement, but I would never really finish, or I'd be approaching the wrong way. So I'd kind of have an idea, but I wouldn't actually think, does anyone actually want this product? So I'd start kind of maybe writing some code and like coming up with this plan of how the product was going to be built, but I wouldn't actually check to see if anyone was actually going to buy it. And there was a couple of times where I made things that then just completely were flopped because no one wanted them. And sometimes these were things that we pushed out into an existing business as well, and you'll remember this. And so, the product was there, it was on sale, but no sales were coming in because I hadn't checked to see if the customer base wanted that specific feature or that product. So that's really important to remember. Let's move on then. What would you say, in terms of productivity, makes the biggest impact on profits? I know that's kind of quite a general question.
I think it's kind of more of a systems type thing, this. It's really identifying what your audience or your market really want versus what they tell you they want, because sometimes they can be two really, really different things. And doing questionnaires and surveys is all very well. You get a little bit of feedback, but actually watching how people behave. Look at those products that actually sell the best, and then have a look at, out of those products, which delivers the most revenue. Because I've worked with clients in the past, particular, and I'll not go into too much detail. This guy actually sold replica furniture, and basically what happened was he was really focused on pushing the product that actually sold the most. We did some work with him, and that's where he decided to focus. But what he really needed to do, and eventually he did move over to, was selling the product that generated the most revenue and pushing that one. And if you can improve your own personal productivity, where you're spending like the first half of your day just working on either that product or service that generates the most revenue per sale or overall per sales, if you can actually focus on that and focus your own personal productivity on that and focus the business on that, that's where you're going to see the biggest growth by far.
Okay, so that's a really, really good bit of gleam of information for someone to take away then is look at what is actually making you money in terms of impacting on profit. Does productivity impact on profit? Well, it depends what you're doing. If you're a consultant and you have or say you're a freelance developer, for example, if you're writing code, then you're earning money. However, if you're sat there on YouTube watching videos, then you're not going to be making money, which is kind of obvious, right? But what happens, if you are founder of a company and you're not necessarily doing anything directly which is making money, maybe you've got sales team working under you or marketing team or development team, but you need to make sure that what you do is looking at how those teams integrate into the business, how they correlate to each other, and really making sure that the flow of everything is going well. That's kind of what I've found with my time recently as I've kind of employed more staff over the years. When I started out, it was just me on my own. I used to do everything. I used to talk to customers, I used to write code, and I was kind of a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. What I've learned to do more recently, and it's kind of has been a steep learning curve, because I used to be quite comfortable in that little bubble where I was doing a little bit of everything, but now I've had to learn how to make sure that team are clicking and ticking the right boxes.
Yeah, I think
and devoting more of my time to actually doing that rather than just kind of sitting there and watching the world go by, or sitting there and spending time looking at servers, the stuff I used to do. And there was a period where I was working alongside the team doing various operational tasks, whereas now I'm very much focusing on just making sure everyone knows what they're doing and really making sure we work at optimum levels.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I mean, there is this huge issue with actually dealing with how you actually, when you grow an organization, where you add people to your startup, how they actually deliver what they deliver. And obviously some staff members will be generating more revenue for the business than others. But one thing I've noticed is talking to a lot of clients who are running SEO agencies, web design agencies, things like that, they still spend their time trying to sell really, really low value sort of services, things like basic SEO, keyword optimization, and they're focused on doing all of that work, and then maybe they'll get some staff on or outsource some of that really basic work, but that actual basic work isn't really even generating much value anyway. And so you've got that problem of you've got people working on something that's not really generating value much anymore. And then you've got that thing about, and I've had this, where you discover that they're actually not doing anything productive. And the time that they said they were working on something for you, they were watching YouTube, or they were turning the computer away from you, or they were basically making it look like they were doing coding on your project, but they were actually making, I don't know, Bangra music sites, something like that.
Sure.
I mean, those are issues we probably don't even have time to talk about today, sort of getting that kind of productivity of employees. But you've got to be selling the right service and in the right way, and it's got to be something your audience actually really wants, not what you think they want.
So we've kind of covered a lot of theory now, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit with my next question. I just want to say this really doesn't really necessarily apply to founders or co-founders or people who are involved in tech or startups, but just everyone in general, human population as a whole. That's a big ask, isn't it? How can people spend less time working?
How can people spend less time working? Well, I think if you're actually a co-founder or a founder, something like that, you're working in some sort of tech startup, whether it's your own business or you're doing it for somebody else, it really is focusing on where you're going to get the biggest return. In other words, what's going to make the biggest difference each day? And there's this kind of old phrase, I think a guy called Brian Tracy, very famous guy, came up with it. It's called "eat the frog." And the most horrible thing you can think about doing probably on the morning is eating a cold, wet, slimy frog. That's your worst task of the day. Get that out of the way, okay? Whether you're an employee, working for yourself, you're just starting out yourself, you've got to get that horrible task out of the way. If you can do that every day, the rest of your day suddenly becomes a lot brighter. Yep. Typically, people have more energy in the morning. That's a great way to actually go ahead. So, talking to somebody I do quite a lot of work with, I'm like, Phil, you need to eat the frog. Eat the frog now, and you'll really find the rest of your day is a lot more useful.
You have to pay that tax bill. You have to answer that letter.
Yes.
The government have written you demanding a load of money. It's
Exactly.
just got to be done. That's the first thing you need to address. Although no one wants to do it, you need to sort it out, because otherwise it will come back and bite you on the behind. That's kind of really good advice, I think. It's a very, very simple thing. Just get the horrible thing out of the way first. So let's just kind of wrap this up then. I think it's been a very interesting little conversation about productivity. First of all, actually, could you recommend a couple of resources if someone wanted to go and buy a really good book or a couple of books on productivity or have a look at a website? Where would you recommend they go?
In terms of productivity, that's a difficult one. I think there are quite a lot of good free tools out there.
Yeah.
I think if you've got a Mac, actually start using the Reminders app.
Yeah.
On there is a really great thing to do. You can also download a lot of free timers and things like that. One of the most powerful things that I've found is literally just having a sheet of paper with each hour on. So you've got 9, 10, 11, 12, and block out your lunch. And each day, physically write down on that piece of paper, here's what I'm doing at 9, here's what I'm doing at 10. And, by all means, have all the sort of the digital resources you can. But actually physically writing stuff down on paper, it seems to make a difference for me. And I think it does for other people as well.
I've heard so many times before that when you write stuff down, with an actual pen or pencil as opposed to writing on screen, you actually remember stuff a lot easier. So if you write down your schedule for that day, number one, it's manageable because you're not trying to get too complicated or try and do too many things. You can block the time out and think realistically, how long is that task going to take to complete for me? But then when it comes time to do it later in the day, not only do you have that sheet of paper physically there and constantly in front of you, whereas if you're using a screen, you're going to be jumping between different programs, different windows, so you're not always necessarily going to have what you need to do in front of you. So sometimes paper does have its place, but also because you've written it down, you're more likely to remember those things.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Also, sticking maybe to just doing 3 big things a day, okay? And you've got that horrible eat the frog moment in the morning, 2 big things after that, and, if you can keep that list quite small, you'll actually feel a sense of accomplishment. The more days you go with feeling a sense of accomplishment, actually your mood improves. You can actually get more work done. But just before we finish, I'd like to share a crazy strategy that a rather eccentric multimillionaire shared with me when I was sort of part of this startup group. His name was Chris Rawson. I'm talking about him in the past tense. I've not spoken to him in a few years, but I'm sure he's still out there. I believe he lives in Canada now. Now, this guy basically became rich making some sort of adapters for joysticks. I don't fully understand what he did. It was a little unusual. And then he made a load of money importing keyboards from China. And he said, here's one of the things I do to get myself productive every day. I get a sort of a spreadsheet, and I list down all of the small little things, not the big things, all of the small little things, they're just the daily irritations. Maybe it's fixing the tumble dryer. Maybe it's, sort of getting that sort of letter or form filled in.
Yeah, checking, it might, if you're a CTO, it might be checking your New Relic account, so to see how your servers are getting on, or if you're, a designer, it might be doing stock graphics for the blog, or
applying
like
for a
that.
lower merchant rate because of your volume of sales. If you're using a credit card processor, it might be that you can actually apply for that. It might just be a small amount.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's about with your email service provider asking if you can have a double opt-in list changed to single opt-in. All those little things. Basically, what Chris said to me is they take up actual valuable space almost in your mind's sort of temporary memory.
Trying to remember them.
Yeah. So basically the idea is they're always in the back of your head. They're taking up space. You're not consciously aware of them, but it reduces your capacity to do other stuff. So just the act of actually writing them down actually really makes you feel a lot better. And then if you can just progress through them each day, that's going to help.
I think that's a really good idea. That's something actually that I don't do, and I think I probably need to do with doing that. I find myself writing down odd things, like I'll have little bits and bobs, like I'll write down maybe 3 things that I need to just remember to do that day, but there is always like an ever-growing list of all of this stuff that I need to get done. Some of it which I never end up getting done anyway, and some of it's not that important, but I know what you mean. You kind of just constantly trying to juggle those things in your head and remember them, and that becomes a real nuisance. So that's
the more you can shift that out of your head, I think that's the best.
Yeah.
One other thing I'll just quickly finish off with is wish I could remember the name of it, but there's a browser extension for Safari and Chrome that allows you to block specific websites between certain hours of the day. So what you can do is even if you're working from home, or you just want to have everything apart from your lunchtime fixed, you can literally say, right, I can't go on these websites, I can't go on Facebook unless it's after 5 p.m. or after 6 p.m. or it's 12 till 1, which is when I have lunch.
That sounds like an incredible test of self-discipline to me.
Yes, but actually having the computer saying, shouldn't you be working yet? Which is literally what it does.
Yeah.
It actually gets you just, that little bit more productive. After all, it's a pain, I promise you. You keep going to those websites and, coloredpencilsales.com or whatever, and it doesn't come through. But after a while, you get used to it, and you actually start spending your time on more productive things. And, you've got tools like Rescue Time and stuff, which will actually then track what you're doing.
Okay, Steve Benn, thanks very much for talking to us here today on the CDNify podcast. Just to finish off with, where can people go and check out your blog and your Twitter?
Well, I'm actually stevebenn.com for the website, and my Twitter, I think, is Steve P. Benn.
Steve P. Benn.
Oh, no, I think it's actually Steve Benn. No, I think it is actually just...
Stephen Benn. Something.
Well, we got some confusion there, as you can see.
To be truthful, you don't really use Twitter actually anymore. You kind of used to.
I know. I am trying to get back into using Twitter, but the fact is I became very distracted by it. So, I kind of ejected myself out. I'm hoping I'm mature and responsible enough to get back into
If that's not
using
a test, a show of devotion to productivity, then I don't know what is. Thanks very much for listening today, guys. We'll be back very soon with another guest interview here at CDNify.